Celtics Reddit podcast.
Back out to Smart. Fakes the pass all the time. Three. Bang! It's Williams screen. Lobs it up for Robert Williams.
Should he know? Jaylen Brown. What a thunder!
Tatum. Durant, the long reach. Tatum crossover pull-up jumper. It's good. 50 points for Jason Tatum.
Hello and welcome to the Celtics Reddit podcast. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. The Celtics, they drop game one after a strong showing from the Giannis-led Milwaukee Bucks. Pretty surprising, I think, even for the defending champs. Joining us to talk all about it, Jackson, aka Rickman Lives. Jackson, how you doing, sir?
Not too bad. I'm a bit tired. It was an early start for both of us, I think.
Right? 3 a.m. game here in Australia. Jackson, you've caught the replay more recently under fresher eyes, I hear.
Yeah, true. I did watch it earlier, but yeah, not quite 3 a.m. early, so we'll go with that. But disappointed. I mean, how can you not be? Going into it, obviously everyone was optimistic. I don't think we had the chance to officially discuss who we had and whatnot, but I was going Celtics in 6. I'm reevaluating that as we speak. But at the same time, I didn't think it was disastrous by any stretch either. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I was allowing some pretty cheeky thoughts to roll around my head over the last few days after how we dominated Kevin Durant and the Nets. I was thinking Celts in 5, we might never lose again. Celts in 4, I would never say this out loud.
No Middleton.
Yeah, exactly. The pathway is there for the Celtics, and then the Bucks come out and show us what a real team looks like. So I think that's a good place to start. The Celtics, they lose 101-89. Jackson, like I said, we'll start with the Bucks. What did they do to get the Celtics all out of sorts? What are your thoughts on just how they discombobulated the Celts?
My basic understanding of it is, and I think it boils down to the fact that we had 28 made field goals and 18 of them were threes.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. That doesn't seem like it happens almost ever. So
yeah, that's nuts.
It was ridiculous.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure 3 of those 10 non-threes were in the first quarter, maybe even 4. So yeah, stupidly weird game. But yeah, you're right. The Bucks, I think what it boils down to is they just weren't letting us get anything in the paint or inside. Forced threes, which some went down, but if you're not getting anything other than threes and the odd free throw, it's not going to go well. And I think, Giannis was probably somewhat inefficient, impacts the game on both ends still. So, it was a bit of a reality check, man. We've all been riding a bit high, probably for the last 2 months. And I think this is the first time we've really got that twinge of adversity.
Definitely.
Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think if you had to describe the game, sort of tactically speaking, in 30 seconds, elevator pitch style, you'd say it pretty much went exactly as advertised, right? The Bucks, the rim protection was unreal. They gave up a lot of three-point looks. We've listened to all the podcasts. We've watched all the pregame stuff. We know by now, if we didn't already, the Bucks, their defense typically tempts you to shoot those threes. We took them, we missed them, and looked a lot like the December Celtics in the process in terms of a lot of those one-pass shoot, which is exactly what the Bucks are trying to lure you into. So I don't think that the Celtics will miss that many threes, subsequently in Game 2 and further in the series, but it was disappointing to see us be tempted into old habits, I suppose. What do you think, Jackson?
Yeah, because the weird thing is it started really, really well. There was, I think the first possession, we force a turnover from Giannis after doubling him. We go up by, I think, 8 points on an 8-0 run. We're getting points in the paint. We're causing them to make all the turnovers. And I was just like, this is going to be fine. This is business
Celtic
as usual.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then we just let go of the rope towards the end of the first quarter. Ended up going in behind. And then the turnovers started piling up. Jaylen Brown's disaster class went to a new level, which I'm sure we'll get into in depth.
7 turnovers. What?
Yeah, it felt like they were all just coming at that time too, and sadly it didn't. They continued, and then I even felt like in the third quarter we're probably still in it. That's maybe when some of the officiating started to go against us, and then you can get a little bit fired up at least from that. You're not getting humiliated, dominated, and in the fourth quarter we just couldn't hit a shot to save our lives to begin with, and they just pulled away, and it was done. So it was. I felt like each quarter had its own sort of narrative going, but it always ended up with Milwaukee just being the better team.
Yeah, and it felt like the Celts were always within striking distance and got some pretty good open looks, namely
Wish we had more good licks. Yeah.
some open looks,
terrible.
namely from Peyton Pritchard, who has been great in those sort of spot minutes and just coming off the bench cold and hitting those threes. But I think he took 8 of them in the game tonight or last night and just couldn't hit any of them. And it's kind of sad, on one hand the only hand really, that we actually needed that from Peyton Pritchard. Like we needed Peyton Pritchard to win this game, essentially, is what it came down to in terms of the shots that the Bucks were allowing us. They knew that. We knew that they knew that. It feels evil to think about now. Like, they knew what they were doing, and they succeeded, and the Celtics lost the game. There's a comment from a Reddit user, Aha Ramirez, who said, the people are going to complain about the threes, but we basically have to make them because we can't score inside. It's in stats here for you, Jackson. Celtics shot 36% from 3, which is like kind of average-ish.
Fine-ish, yeah.
And I think some late makes from Jaylen Brown bumped those numbers up a little bit. It wasn't like that. It wasn't that good. Smart was 1 of 6 from 3, which is a problem. I just felt like he was gunning a little bit too hard, and not necessarily like he's been great shooting from the corner, but these above the break threes with like sort of just a glimpse of space. That's what the Bucks want you to do, man. So I just didn't think that was a great part of the game, and he needs to be more cognizant of that going into game 2. The Celts shot 6 of 9 from corner threes, which is great, but then 12 of 40 from elsewhere beyond the 3-point arc, which is obviously terrible. 10 of 22 at the rim, and 0 of 12 from the short range to mid-range range, which those are the shots they're giving up. We have to hit those shots. We're going to get into the adjustments a little bit later, but that's just unsustainable. And if the Celtics want to get anywhere in this series beyond being swept, the Celtics, they made their fewest 2-pointers in team history today with 10. The previous low was
that's wild.
14 against Toronto in 2016. Yeah, that's absolutely nuts.
Like ever.
Yeah, and a huge part of that is the Bucks' rim protection. So the Brook Lopez, there was one example where he blocked Robert Williams, and it felt like, I don't know, like he'd just like pulled our pants down on the court or something. Like he block the Time Lord, right? The Time Lord blocks you. And Brook Lopez is like a physically impressive like specimen, but he seems goofy and like flat-footed and everything. And so to see him get up and actually block Robert Williams was kind of disconcerting. Tatum, Brown, Smart, everyone struggled to get to the rim subsequently. And to finish up this little pile of stats here, Jackson, Kirk Goldsberry tweeted that the Celtics made their fewest 2-pointers in team history today with 10. I think I'm actually repeating myself here. I am repeating myself. I'm not going to
worth repeating because it's
ridiculous. It does bear repeating.
Ridiculous. This team's around since the 50s. Like,
right? Yeah, this is insane.
Yeah, it's never happened before. I mean, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself by like segueing into things that like make us feel good or like can feel optimistic, but like that won't happen again.
Surely.
Like, I don't give a shit how good your rim protection is. No, there's going to be other opportunities for points, which the adjustments, I'm sure we will cater to, amongst some other things. But yeah, like in just those stats alone in a vacuum is just, it's remarkably bad.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll fast forward a little bit and we can come back and touch on some other stuff a little bit later. We had a little segment that I was going to spin into expectations for game 2. The segment's going to be called "It's going to be okay because ... Jackson, why is it going to be okay for game 2? What are we going to change here?
Let me pick my list because I've got a few down. You know, it'll. I'm sure it brings comfort to everyone that I've got a few reasons why it should be good. Where shall I start here? For everything we just talked about in terms of like the shot profile, only taking threes, being deterred from the rim, etc. It was actually, even with that, it's still a very, very even game if you ignore points off turnovers or the offense that they were getting in transition and the turnovers. I think it was 7-1 turnovers in the first quarter, and then we ended up making, I think, 7 more than them. So it was like a huge disparity and in terms of turnovers from like the second quarter onwards. We've really just got to fix that up. And I think the game is completely different. You don't let go of the rope at the end of the first quarter. Like, no shit, we're up 10 and then went down 3. So obviously that's going to be good enough for a win. But like just moments like that where, you know, I honestly think that just holding onto the ball and not committing as many turnovers, repeating myself now too, giving up as many transition points, I think is going to be the key. Yeah, does that make sense?
We're completely shook. It's crazy. So the Bucks had 28 points off turnovers against the Celtics 20. They also had 34 points in the paint. Bucks had 28 points off turnovers. The Celtics had 8 points off turnovers, which is insane.
It was like 7 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. 8, and then points in the paint, the differential was 34 Bucks, 20 Celtics. So got to turn that around. Huge part of that was the raging perimeter defense by Drew Holiday, Grayson Allen, Wesley Matthews, who I didn't think would be a factor. Hopefully he won't be as the series progresses, but he certainly was in game 1. And the near full court defense that they were just lunging on Jaylen Brown and Tatum and anyone who was attempting to be the ball handler for the Celtics and forcing those turnovers, and even their transition runs off rebounds were insane. Like, they really just ran us off the court there and hounded us all the way up the court. You'd think it'd be an obvious adjustment for the team to make to sort of scheme against that kind of full court pressing as the season progresses there. Okay, so in terms of what we can do better, in terms of why everything's going to be okay, I'm just looking at my list here. We've already mentioned so many of them as well. It's crazy how we just default to like, this is why we should be happy.
Yeah, it's the copium, man.
Yeah, it's the copium. I've been mainlining it all day. Don't expect us to shoot so poorly, I think, is one. And, you know, the Bucks do give up those looks from beyond the arc, but I do think that the Celtics need to move the ball as they have been since they found themselves since January, and find great shots, not good shots. It's a cliche for a reason, but dribble, screen, pass, shoot off one pass it's not the sort of energy. It sounds sort of cosmically, you know, bullshit or whatever, but you need better energy behind the ball in your ball movement to get better looks and like appease.
The energy is shifting the wrong way if they play that way.
Exactly, it's downshifting. So we need better ball movement. Rather than shoot at the rim, and credit to Wayne Spooney for this, he was calling this out in our Slack, dribble up to like 2 steps back from Brook Lopez and then jack up the floater. Don't try and dunk on him or lay up on him at the rim. He's going to contest that, and he's a great rim contester. You can still penetrate. You can still get beyond the perimeter defense and get into those pockets of space. But if you can get that shot up, you know, just before you reach the Lopez zone, for lack of a better term, I think that's where we're going to get some better looks that we weren't able to generate or weren't looking to generate in game 1.
Yeah.
What else, Jackson? Why else is it going to be okay?
Yeah, just quickly on that too, like Tatum's got it in him to like just, you know, maybe he's going to have to settle for some like long 2s or mid 2s and stuff. It's not ideal, it's not pretty, but if it's enough to get like that kind of draw out or nullify Lopez to some degree, like Tatum's good enough to hit those shots now, and it's the playoffs, like you need that kind of quality and class, and I think he's got it. So yeah, I think we'll be seeing more of that. I guess it's time to address the cadaver in the room, and that is, surely Jaylen Brown is not going to be this bad like ever again. That's the worst Jaylen Brown game I think I've ever seen. I could be forgetting like something horrendous. Remind me, but that was gash.
It was indeed very gash. Certainly nothing in recent memory, and you know it's kind of easy to discount things from earlier in his career because he is still so young. Like he's not even in his prime, so you don't look too far back in his career for terrible games. He didn't make the playoffs last year because he was injured, so therefore, officially his worst game ever, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And it's so, I guess there were concerns about the hamstring, and like if that's the case, then I almost like kind of want it to be, because at least then that would almost like explain it, and you think if he just rested and could get better. Anyway, but you just look completely disengaged, 7 turnovers. And it's so out of character and out of step with what he was doing in the Brooklyn series. Like, he wasn't gangbusters. It wasn't like peak Jaylen Brown, but particularly in the fourth quarter, like, he was hitting shots when it mattered. And ironically, I think he was hitting shots in the fourth this time, but, we're already 16 down, and he had, been, the effort he had all game was just not there. I think he's going to bounce back. Like, he's earned enough, like, clout and, respect and, belief and admiration from me. I could go on and on. I still love Jaylen Brown. I'm confident he is going to bounce back, but if it is the injury, and that is the kind of Jaylen Brown that we can expect to see, if not as bad, anything less than abhorrent would be an improvement, but it won't be good enough.
Yeah, so I'm sticking with the current segment. I feel like one thing that we all have in common on this podcast is how, like, the devastating sort of day-to-day implications of a loss. The Celtics lose, and, like, all days are ruined until the Celtics play and win again. Coming away from this one, obviously it's a playoff series, and so it's not like a sudden death situation. Did you feel as devastated walking away from this game one loss, or did you kind of have that air of, like, I feel like we have the adjustments in us to still pull this out?
Yeah, it did take a little bit because it was a pretty dominant win in the end, and that is deflating. But when you get a chance to, like, sort of decompress and breathe and look at it objectively, like, this is a poor comparison, but 3 years ago, second round, I'm pretty sure we beat Milwaukee on the home court by like 20 or something. Like, Al Horford, like, just turning Giannis into a cabbage. Like, it was easy. And then steamrolled after that. And we all know what happened preceding. So, not saying that's going to happen or anything like that is possible of happening. But it's game one. Hey, like, adjustments happen. Like, the one thing that sucks about it, I know we're trying to be positive here. It does make next game must win.
It does.
Like, 2-0 going into Milwaukee, like, forget it. That's good night, I think. But I don't think we'll be as bad again. I think it was probably a little closer than maybe it seems. And to answer your question, once I've kind of talked myself into all of this, I feel okay now. I feel fine about our chances moving forward. And I do believe we can make it 1-1.
Yeah, I feel like our perception of playoff series based on our Nets experiences in the last 2 years have really ruined things for us. So we had a sweep of the Nets in round one. We were gentlemen swept by the Nets, last playoffs while we had a really decimated team. And, like, your typical NBA playoff series against two really good teams should go, like, minimum 6 games. So, I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of us. Like, we could get swept. We could lose in 5. But, like, losing one game here to the Bucks, to the, like, best player in the world, to the defending champions, is not something that's out of the ordinary. And Ime Udoka was really confident in his post-game presses about the changes that the Celtics could make and things that they could address going into game 2. So we'll stick with that. My next everything's going to be okay point is we don't need to throw so many doubles or triples on Giannis. I think it's fine to help at the rim, and Rob should be sort of the main candidate for that. But there are a couple of situations. I feel like Grant Williams got caught up on this a few times where we would send help to Giannis, and I felt like the defender on Giannis, whether it was Horford or Rob, were like, no, I'm good. Like, I've got this guy. He's, I've got him pinned to the baseline. I've got this. You don't need to help off of Grayson Allen or Wesley Matthews or one of their other quite potent three-point shooters. Giannis had 12 assists in the end. Giannis is great. We should never discredit his individual ability, but I felt like we opened him up to those assists more than we needed to, and I think we need to trust in our one-on-one defenders a little bit more. Like, why are we paying Al Horford all of this money? I just think that we need to make it harder on Giannis in different ways. So I think there can be adjustments made there, and in that sense, I feel like everything's going to be all right. Which is tough to say around Giannis. Any thoughts there or any other points you want to add?
Yeah, no, like, historically, Helford's been very serviceable against Giannis, so there could definitely be a few possessions where we could have probably stayed at home and maybe prevented a 3, and they add up. So, I hope the adjustments will be, they won't be too drastic. I feel, again, I kept coming back to the first, 8 minutes or so of the game, but that was, everything we were doing was fine there. Forcing turnovers, getting to the paint, nullifying Giannis, without overcommitting, or, if you are going to overcommit, make it work. I'm pretty sure the adjustments will see that not be exploited as much. Yeah,
absolutely. Couple of Reddit comments here. One from Acrobatic Feedback. They say shooting 37% from 3 is basically as efficient as 55% from 2. I don't get this idea that we are shooting too many We lost the game from inside, 10 of 34 from 2. I think that's maybe the third time I've said that now on this podcast, Jackson. And turnovers leading to fast break points. And another comment from user I'm the King Sama. They say, the team has responded all year long. Need to trust them. And Ime, we're still better. We're still a better team than them without Middleton. Just need to stay composed and execute our potential. So, couple of final points here from you, Jackson, as far as why everything's going to be okay, why you're confident heading into game 2. Have you got anything else on your list there?
I'll just shoehorn this in. Like, I saw Drew Holiday make 2 pull-up transition threes today. Does that ever happen? Like, I don't watch enough Bucks to know if that's something that he's got in his repertoire, but it was just like, come on, man. Like, that shit just felt like unfair, and it's just one of those games where I think you just have to suck it up and move on, because I don't think it was indicative of how we've been playing or the team that we currently are. I think you are going to see, a Jason Tatum that really tries to be like the best player on the court, as futile as that might be. Even if he tries, even if he's like only second best by a little bit and everyone else can perform, then we're definitely getting game 2.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you're right. Just looking at these stats here, points in the paint, Milwaukee 34, Boston 20, fast break points 28, Boston 8, which we touched on. Turnovers, Milwaukee 13, Boston 18, and of course Giannis's 12 assists. I mean, yeah. I did have to sort of scrape the barrel a little bit, I suppose, heading into this podcast, as far as why we could feel better going into game 2. There was a stretch of the game towards the end where first I thought Udoka should have pulled the starters, but then it became somewhat clear that maybe he was trialing things for game 2 already. And part of that, there was a lineup where Rob was on the bench and it was Horford and Grant Williams on opposite corners. And then I think it was a Smart and Tatum pick and roll, or a Tatum and Jalen pick and roll, or a pick and roll between one of the remaining players there, not Grant or not Horford. And with that spacing, with those 2 3-point shooting threats on the bigs there with Grant now, we were just getting a little bit more of a runway to the rim, just a little bit more room to maneuver as far as, and I think we did drive and kick outs on almost all of those plays, and they looked good. And the Bucks lead was too high at that point for us to come back, but they really in that stretch of time generated some good looks. And I'm not saying that we need to bring Rob off the bench in game 2, but I do think we're going to see extended periods of time with that Grant and Al Horford as the only bigs spacing the floor lineup, and then some like ball screens from whatever ball handler doesn't have the ball in their possession at the moment. So if it's Tatum bringing the ball up, then it's Smart setting the screen or whatever it might be. I do think we're going to see a little bit more of that. I think they found something there. Did you notice that at all? Or is there anything else that you saw them trial in game 1 that you think they might attempt in game 2?
Nah, man, I think I stopped paying attention. But
yes,
I'll take your word for it. That sounds really positive and really encouraging. So, like, I mean, if they were doing that, and it's the kind of thing that they deem worked well enough to try out, and Budenholzer doesn't have a counter for it, then I'll be all for that. Sorry, I'm looking down at my phone. There was one other thing I think it's worth mentioning. You may have potentially we're going to mention it already,
sure.
But there is a stat that I think Spoons shared with us this morning about teams in game 1. Oh, it was you, was it?
It was
yes,
me.
It was.
Yeah.
Please share that with us, because this made me feel probably better than anything.
Yeah, so this is so I had 2 notes, Jackson, to like end the pod with, and you've hit them both already. So thanks for that.
Hey,
Kevin Pelton.
This is what practice happens. Yeah.
Kevin Pelton tweeted this out: the teams that win game 1 on the road by double digits have gone 2-10 in the series over the last decade. Do you know who those 2 teams are?
Oh no, is it us?
We're one of them, I believe.
Oh yeah, against the Bucks 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So some interesting implications there. And I think the other one might be the Wolves from this year. I haven't verified that, but I saw someone reply to the tweet saying that. So interesting. But anyway, the point being is that, we're fine, right? Like it's a game 1 loss in a best of 7 series. We expect the response. We're confident enough in what we've seen from the Celtics since early January this year that we expect them to come out and, address those finer points that we discussed and shoot better overall. It's weird that Derek White was like the guy nailing threes today. That's just you could feel the energy was off at that point. And that was like
Yeah.
before things had gotten out of hand. It's like, hang on, like Derek White's making threes? Like that's kind of weird, right? So hopefully we can expect things to sort of just find their groove a little bit more in game 2, and they'll be reminiscent of the Celtics that we have come to know and love. I had a few more notes on the Bucks and why they sort of destroyed us. You mentioned Drew Holiday, who I want to touch on. He was outstanding. Like, he was scoring from everywhere. You mentioned the pull-up threes. He had a few catch-and-shoot makes as well. He was getting into the paint and finishing with, like, these little push shots as well. And then his defense on Tatum and Brown and whoever he got matched up on the other end was incredible. And we talked about going into this series that Drew Holiday, he's just not, like, the archetype, like, for the second best player on a team, on a championship team. Did he show you anything tonight, like, to, like, refute that or to prove that? I feel like everything we saw from him was like he's very much could be the second best player on a championship team.
I've never considered him the second best player on a championship team, no. But, like, I mean, performance-wise, in the absence of Middleton and, being complimentary to Giannis and doing what you got to do, yeah, like, it was an incredible performance. I had a good point, but I think I've forgotten it. Sorry.
We've been up since 3 a.m., so it's okay.
Yeah,
it's now,
exactly.
It's now
I
9
think
p.m. for anyone listening.
Yeah, we're going on fumes here, guys, but we do it out of love. The very first Celtics Bucks game of the year, I think he was like 1 for 10 from 3 as well too. So
yeah.
I don't watch him as closely enough to know whether it's been like an improvement or he's like this in the playoffs or whatnot. But no, man, I've always rated Drew Holiday. Like I said, never rated him that highly, but he's a solid player, man, and think about this. Like, we rolled Brooklyn without Time Lord, who, while he probably isn't the Drew Holiday equivalent, or Chris Middleton equivalent, I should say, still, like, an important piece of what we do, like, to offense and defense. And, there was a question mark with him out. We didn't miss a beat. And it looks like the Bucks are that good of a team and Giannis is that impactful that it's probably not going to matter. So we're going to have to just we're going to have to play to our maximum capabilities to our game plan. And I don't think it matters who's out there, like, probably sans Giannis. Like, get rid of him and it's going to be a cakewalk, as good as Drew Holiday is. With everyone else out there, though, even without Middleton, like, they're good enough to get through this series. Hey, so it probably starts with nullifying Holiday as much as you can Giannis as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a wake-up call for the Celtics. And I think we've touched on everything the Bucks did well and everything the Celtics can do better to respond. It's clearly a bad game from the Celtics, just independent of everything the Bucks did.
Yeah.
The Celtics just played poorly, and, like, they did get some decent looks. We talked about, like, the setup for those looks wasn't how we like them to be, but they did have some open shots. You expect those to go down, and you expect the Celtics to adjust accordingly. Just wondering if there's anything else to touch on here. Like, I've run out of notes, I suppose, Jackson. We kind of have jumped all over the page a little bit. Well, let me ask you this. Is there any Celtic from today's game that you thought played well?
Overall, I mean, Tatum wasn't bad by any stretch. He was quiet to start with. Like, it was apparent that him and Brown were struggling to begin with, but I felt like he came into the game a little bit more. I mean, we've touched on White hitting threes, but beyond that, there was anything groundbreaking. I suppose Horford was decent. Started out well. When he was hitting threes to start with, I thought, oh baby, like, this is the key here. Like, if we can get this happening, but he probably didn't do enough beyond that. Actually, missed a lot of threes. Now that I think about it, so yeah, man, I'm not too sure. I'd probably say Tatum.
Yeah, Horford was who I had, like, 12 points, only 2 turnovers, which in such a high turnover game is worth mentioning. 2 blocks, a steal, 3 assists, 10 boards, and was 4 of 9 from 3, so the same as Tatum. I almost put money.
Yeah, it wasn't so bad then.
Almost put money on the first basket of the game being an Al Horford 3, because all the talk leading up into, like, and all the talk leading up into like how the Celtics would get into their offense was like, drive and kick. We're going to benefit from Horford's 3-point shooting. Like, he's been great heading into the season, and, like, the first point of the entire series was an Al Horford 3. So I guess the lesson there is that I need to be more of a ruthless gambler. There were some health scares in this game. We'll run through them very quickly. Marcus Smart injured, I want to say, everywhere on his entire body. Quad, knee, had the shoulder stinger as well, where I guess he was dislocated and he went to the the locker room and they like Lethal Weapon popped it back into its socket or something. Rob Williams with the nut tap where, just got a brutal, knock to the, the meat and two veg there, and it seemed like he was pretty out of sorts. And then, of course, the Jalen hamstring as well. Jackson, do you think is any of those injuries in particular that might hamper us throughout this season and beyond, or this series and beyond?
If they persist, all of them pretty equally. Like, I think Smart going out would really suck. Yeah. Like, I mean, if that's what happened, if he had his arm popped down and just popped it back in, like, isn't that like just a fucking no to keep playing on? Like, do you need to have like that looked at or whatever, or is this something you can just sort of tough guy and get through and no problem?
I don't know. I've always only ever had like lower body issues, ankles, knees, etc. I think Marcus Smart probably has his own like injury rule book. The medical team probably have a big thick book for like the team and the protocols for like like someone gets hit in the nuts, for example, and then a thicker book for Marcus Smart, which has like studies on his unique like body and physical makeup and like how to act accordingly. It's like a completely different thing that like defies medical science. So I
don't pull him out of the game unless he's down a limb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that,
yeah, unless he's unconscious, basically. The Jalen hamstring, I think, for me, is the thing. Like, we love and trust Marcus Smart, and we've seen him get these seemingly debilitating injuries and then just, like, come back out, and he's, like, the same Marcus Smart diving on the floor, that we've always known and loved. The hamstring injury, Jaylen Brown, with the exception of that insane putback dunk over Giannis, where another moment where I was like, Celts in 4, the hamstring's looking good. He's dunking over Giannis again. That's on your like Celtics Bucks bingo card as well as Jaylen Brown dunking over Giannis Antetokounmpo. We had that, and yet then he kind of like regressed again and went back to his. That was that stretch early in the season for the Celtics where Jaylen came back like too early from that hamstring pain. Kind of looked like that all game. So to me, that's like the lingering thing that sort of bothers me going into this series, the rest of the series.
I wonder if it was just, he was just having that poor of a game. Maybe like mentally, he like was putting it onto his hamstring. Not saying he was faking it or anything, or he like somehow like mentally like made it injure itself or whatever. But do you know what I'm saying? If you're just having a bad game, like put it this way: if I airball a free throw, I'm going. Like, not that I heard it then, but I'm just acting like, shit, there's something wrong with my hand. It's like, all right, here we go. This will be better.
I do that.
Yeah, exactly. So
knee.
maybe just when you have like a 4 for fucking 18 game or whatever it was that he shot, he's just like, fucking hamstring hurts. But if he can't, if it's genuine and genuinely bothering him and he can't go full game and he can't perform at his level, then that's gonna be very bad. Probably that one would suck. Almost as much as Smart, but yeah, you don't want either of them.
Yeah, just get through game 2, win game 2, take the 3 days off or whatever it is. Everyone recovers. Al Horford regains the ability to guard Giannis again. We fix Jalen's hamstring. We should have led with this in the everything's going to be okay segment, but everything's going to be okay. All right.
We had to mentally like get there in the roadmap of our minds. So I feel like that's what we have a foolproof plan now.
That's all we ever do on this podcast. All right, I've got to wrap this up. I have to go to bed. I'm really zoning out here. Apologies, Jackson, and anyone listening. A couple of Reddit points to tune out here with, or to end here with. I Might Be Truthing says, feel like we needed this wake-up call. Time for Ime to watch some film and make some drastic changes on the offensive end. I still believe Season 6, cuss cries. And then a post from CA Mini, and this is the other end of podcast point that you already touched on, Jackson. Tuesday is a must-win game. They're going to say, can't go down 2 and then go to Milwaukee. The team needs to respond. Jalen was getting laughed at by some Bucks at the end. I didn't see that, but wouldn't be surprised. He needs to show up. So, Jackson, predictions, like specific predictions for game 2. How do you think it's going to play out?
A win in the same fashion like Brooklyn game 2. Probably fall down again by 15. Start to fear the end, and then Tatum and everyone else turns up and we win by about like 6 or so.
Yeah, I think it's some form of figuring it out and then going back to Milwaukee with that momentum, like, we figured you out, good luck, even if we're on your home court, we don't care, we know how to play you, we figured you out. We'll see. Everything's going to be all right, people. That is going to do it for this one. Game 2, the redemption game, is right around the corner. Spoons and Jay will be on deck for the post-game pod after that one. Jackson, love your work, mate. Thanks again.
Thank you, man. Thank you for staying up.
No worries.
Getting through it.
Until next time, go Celtics. Peace.